Hello and welcome to part 2 of our Crowdfunding for Heritage series. My name's Sammy Morger. I'm part of the team here at Crowdfunder, where I'm broadcasting from live this afternoon. So hopefully you're here today because you're thinking about crowdfunding and you're looking to learn more about what it is you need to do to make your project successful. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about creating your project, so making the perfect project page. Last time, we were looking at planning a project. So if you missed the last session, you can actually watch that back on YouTube. There's a link below this video for you to go back through that first step of planning your project. But today, as I said, we're going to particularly be focusing on creating. Now, there are 3 packs that go alongside this series. The first one on planning, the second one on creating, and the final one on running your project. So if you haven't downloaded and had a look at that second pack on creating your project, it's a really good idea to do that alongside these sessions. You'll find it really, really useful. So today, focusing specifically on telling your story, first of all, through a written description, but also through video. We're going to look at what kind of rewards you can offer in return for pledges, and also on how to set target. What's a realistic target and how to work that out. So before we get going too much, we're going to have a look at an example of a real life project which funded back at the end of last year, actually, and they actually received funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund towards their project. They received £10,000 worth of funding. So let's have a quick look through their project page and see if we can identify a few really key things on there that we think make it great. Now, first of all, of course, for those of you who've already noticed, we've got Lorraine Kelly, who they recruited as a celeb supporter to do their project video for you. Doesn't mean that you need to recruit a celeb for your own video, but I think it was definitely something that would really work well for them. Now, as we start to look through the page, a few things jump out first of all. We can see that they've got some really great, strong imagery, and for me, that's always the thing that jumps out. Also, some of the titles that they have make it really clear what it is that I'm reading about, so I can jump straight into the sections that I want. A little bit of fun with the images as well. They've got some real people on the page, and really great as well for those of you that have spotted that they have these testimonials, what our visitors say, adding other voices to the page. And as we keep going right the way down to the bottom, we'll see that they've got a really strong ending as well, talking about the impact that the funding is going to have and a thank you. Now, if we scroll back up, you start to see that you can see all of the rewards down the right-hand side. That's those grey boxes. So you can check back and see how many people pledged on each reward, which is really useful for when you're thinking about your own project and your own rewards, perhaps. So please do have a look at that project. You can find it again if you search for RRS Discovery, and you can find that really easily. So moving on then about your own project. Now, all of this again is very much in the pack that hopefully you'll have seen. But let's spend just a minute focusing on what are the key things that you need to pin down. So first of all, it's all about finding your hook. What is it that makes your project interesting to people? What is it that's going to be that connection for them that makes them motivated or interested in supporting it? So these three key points are a good way of dividing that down. First of all, what is it you're trying to achieve? And what we mean here is not just what is it that you're looking to physically do. So perhaps you're trying to renovate a building, but actually, what is it that you're trying to achieve with that? Is it uniting a community? Is it encouraging people to share stories? Is it preserving a cultural tradition? So go a level further when you're thinking about what it is that you're trying to achieve when you're working out that section. Next, what is it that makes your project great? And I think you can swap that word great for many, many other words. What is it that makes it interesting? What is it that makes it exciting, unique, innovative? All those different words that you might use, which is all about capturing that interest. What makes you stand out to the crowd? Finally, who you are and what's your experience. And you're trying to do two things here. First of all, you're building credibility in you and your team so that people have the confidence that you're the right people to be doing this project. And also making the project very human. People fund people. You don't need to be a sort of faceless, nameless organisation. You can include your team members, include profiles, images of yourselves, so that people feel like they know who it is that's taking responsibility for making this thing happen. Which leads really nicely onto adding a bit of visual texture to that written description, to that story. I think we all, when we're going through websites and reading things on paper as well, we expect to see visual content in there these days. It's very unusual, unless we're sort of, reading an essay or sort of a published book, that we would see something without anything to break up that text. It's very intimidating to an audience to see just block text. So do what we saw on RRS Discovery's project and make sure that you're including some images, definitely ones that link to your project, its location, perhaps some before and after photos, some designs, some sketches, definitely pictures of people as well, of your team or the people that are going to benefit the project. And that can include things like adding in maps to show people where you are, and also maybe even infographics. If, for example, you have a timeline that can show the history of your project, that's a really good way of illustrating that story on the page. Same if you have some data about perhaps a problem or a social issue, something you can illustrate really visually. It's a much more interesting way of telling that story. Definitely want to be using headings as well. I think when we look through RRS Discovery's page, I find those headings really useful to tell me what it is that that section is going to be about, so I can jump straight to the bits I'm really interested in. And finally, testimonials. So like we were talking about just a moment ago, having some other voices on the page so that you almost feels like you have a crowd on that page before you even have any pledges, because you've got other voices and you've got this kind of sense of there being more than just yourself involved with the project. Of course, there is another way to tell your story, and that's through the medium of video. Now, really important for me to mention at this point that a video is not essential. You're perfectly fine to crowdfund without one. What we do find is that projects that do have videos tend to do better in terms of engagement. It tends to work much better. It doesn't have to be professional. You don't need to pay someone to do it. You can do one with your camera phone. That's absolutely fine. In fact, most videos are actually shot on a camera phone. Make sure that you are holding your phone sideways on though, not the way that you'd normally be holding it if you were texting. Otherwise you end up with a video that's tall instead of wide, which doesn't really work so well when you're uploading them onto the page. Doesn't need to be long, keep it short. 2 minutes is really the maximum. It's fine to have one which is shorter than 2 minutes. Make sure that you're somewhere that we can hear what you're saying. That's really, really key. It's a nice idea to shoot a video out in a field or at the beach, or perhaps in a town centre to really get a sense of place and space and atmosphere. But if we can't hear what you're saying, it's all a little bit of wasted effort. Do make sure you've got people on camera. Doing sort of slideshows or picture montages aren't as good at all as having someone, actually either yourself or someone who's involved with the project, talking to camera. And do write down your key points. Don't worry about over scripting it, but it's really good to have something that you can keep referring back to and look at. Just get the camera rolling, start talking and see what comes out. So on to rewards now, and this is actually the part of setting up a project that we get the most questions about. The question that I hear all the time is, we don't have any product, anything that we can give away. What is it that we can do as rewards? We're really stuck for reward ideas. So the first thing I'd suggest would be to look through other projects that are similar to yours and have a look at what people offered, and more importantly, which kind of rewards people were opting for, which ones were they buying. Work back from your audience. You should remember from part 1 of the sessions, we drew out those network maps. Do you remember they're like a big spider diagram? So you should have a bit of a clear idea as to who it is that you're focusing your project towards. So work back from that. Instead of thinking, what can I offer? Think what's going to be attractive to them, what's going to be worthwhile and valuable. And that's really where to start thinking about your rewards. So think about things that are authentic, and perhaps opportunities to get involved with the project to come along, experiences, maybe an opportunity to come and do something or learn about something. That's a really great way to get your community involved. Another way of thinking about it is perhaps pairing up what that money will pay for and using that as a reward. So if, for example, £10 will pay for a new spade and shovel, then you can do that as the reward. You know, your £10 will be going towards this. Perhaps £50 will pay for another piece of equipment or for a member of staff for X amount of days. So you can start to work back through that way and think about offering rewards in that respect. Also worth me mentioning at this point, you don't need to have rewards in order to put your project live on Crowdfunder. You can do a donation-only project, and that's absolutely fine. Also, every project, even if you do have rewards, will have a little button at the top of the page where people can opt to donate only if they don't want to select a reward. So either way, you're going to be fine. Okay, so moving on to looking at targets. Again, sometimes it feels quite tricky to work out what is a good number for you to aim for with your target. So I actually find it much more useful to think about targets in terms of people rather than pounds. So what you can do is use these numbers to work out how many people on average you need to make a pledge in order to reach a target. So if you know, for example, looking at your network map, you can drive 100 people to your project page. We know that 1 in 20 people will make a pledge. So if you have 100 people, that's 5 people making a pledge, okay? So we've worked out we've got 5 people making a pledge. And if we know that the average pledge is £50, 5 people pledging £50, £250. Simple. Of course, those numbers will vary, but it's a really useful way to start thinking about how many people you need in order to reach a set target. And of course, you want to take into account the money that you actually need to make the project happen. It's very much a balance between how much is realistic from your crowd and how much you actually need. Do take into account fees as well and any costs that you might incur delivering on your rewards. If you're thinking, we have a couple of targets, there's a minimum amount that I need in order to make my project happen, and then there's kind of what I really need in an ideal world so that I can do everything I want to do. Generally, my advice would be to go for that lower number initially, and then to overfund, smash through that target within the allotted time, and go on to eventually raise that higher number. But there's more information on setting targets in that pack, so do please refer back to that. The other choice that you get to make on Crowdfunder is whether to set your project as all or nothing or flexible funding. All or nothing does exactly what it says on the tin. You have to hit your target in order to receive the money raised. If you don't hit your target, you don't get any money, your backers aren't charged, you pay no fee, but essentially nothing moves, your project doesn't happen. Flexible funding, or keep what you raise, is kind of the opposite. So whatever money you raise, regardless of whether you hit your target or not, you get to keep it. Now at this point, people usually ask, why would anyone go for all or nothing? Flexible funding sounds like the much easier, safer option. And it is in many respects. It's much easier, you know that whatever you raise, you're going to walk away with something. But actually, all or nothing is a much stronger motivator for both you and your crowd. Imagine if your target was £5,000 and you have 4,000 at the moment raised. It's so much stronger for you to be able to go out and say, we just need to raise that final £1,000 in order to make this happen, to really motivate your crowd and get everyone pushing towards that. Something worth considering, okay? So if you've made it this far and you've worked through part 2 of the pack and you haven't started crowdfunding yet, you haven't added your project, now's definitely the time to push that button. It doesn't mean that you have to start going live and collecting money. It just means that you can start playing around with it, start filling things out and figuring out how it works. No one will be able to see your project until you send it to them. So don't worry about working through rough drafts and that kind of thing. If you do have any questions at all, you can reach me for any quick, short, sharp questions on Twitter. I'm at Sammy Morger, there's the handle there. Or you can email in to our support team and someone will be more than happy to work through anything that you're getting stuck on. Our next session is going to be after Easter now, and that's going to be all about running your project, which is how you promote it, how you market it, how you share it, and get it in front of people and get them motivated to pledge. That's going to be same time, 12:30 on Tuesday, the 25th of April. So I hope that you found the session today useful. If you need to go back and rewatch any of this, you can find it still on YouTube. The same link will take you through to the video, so you can send it on to anyone that you need to as well. Please do use the packs. They're definitely there for that reason. And before our next session, have a go at downloading part 3 of the pack on running your project and familiarise yourself with some of the bits and bobs in there. I hope to see you next time. Thanks, bye.